during the early parts of the war, counterterrorism. So for the first time, really and forever, we were seeing the really wide usage of special operations forces. Because before this war, everyone knows about Navy SEALs now. They know about Delta Force and Green Berets and Rangers and everything else. But prior to this war, it was really obscure. The special operations community was kind of on the fringes of the military. And, previous generations like the 60s, 70s, 80s, like to join special ops was a career ender. They're like, hey, you're never going to make rank. You're never going to be successful in the military. Like that's where kind of the weird snake eaters went. In the Army, you were infantry. In the Navy, you were aviation or ships, In the Marines, you were infantry, and you didn't go to special ops. So, but the special operations community that had been accepted was really the Army. And the Army ran and still does run SOCOM. They're by sheer amount of size. The Army Special Operations Command has about 65,000 people in it, and including support staff. I mean, shooters, actual operators, you've only got probably 4,000, 5,000 of that, but maybe 10,000. But the rest are logistics, support, intelligence. The Navy's soft community is like 2,000. Very small in comparison. So we're always working for the Army. As a SEAL, you're always working for the Army. You're either working for a Green Beret officer, a Ranger, a Delta guy. At some point, you are saying yes, sir, to an Army officer. So during the early years of the war, it was the first time we'd been jammed together as a community. Normally, SEALs were just working in the water, doing maritime missions. Army would do land, and we'd rarely cross paths. 02, 03, and 04 especially, once Iraq kicked off, the demand for special operations forces was just way outstripping supply. Rumsfeld wanted the light footprint, and globally, from Africa to South America to Middle East to Southeast Asia, the highest concentration of Muslim population at the time was in Indonesia, Jakarta area. So we had tons of deployment down in Southeast Asia because there's a lot of extremism there. And there was way too much demand for special ops globally. So we started to create these SOTF, Special Operation Task Forces, and CJA SOTF, Combined Joint Special Operation Task Force. And that would combine units from all over the world. So we'd have the British SAS, Australian SAS, Canadian Commandos, Joint Task Force 2, Lithuanian SOF, you name it. All these different countries' commandos were kind of fusing together into a joint force. And in the U.S. side, the problems that were emerging was, the Rangers and Green Berets, Delta, Marine Corps, they could all kind of speak the same language. Their ranks were the same. They were all land forces. Then you stick SEALs in the mix. Everything's different. Radios are different. Guns are different, procedures are different, our verbiage, our ranks, everything. So it wasn't going well. And people were getting killed as a result because, just procedures were different and there'd be mistakes on the battlefield and people wouldn't come home. So there was a move to, the Army's not going to speak SEAL. So SEALs had to learn how to work Army. So I ended up being part of an experimental program. I got to go through Ranger School, Airborne School, Army Recon School, go through some Green Beret training and go deploy with the Green Beret troops. So I basically went through a very condensed Army Special Operations training pipeline and got to really learn and appreciate how the Army did business. So then once I became a SEAL, I was both a Ranger and a SEAL, and I could kind of speak both languages. And I can't tell you what a huge benefit that was for me because, I graduated the academy. 3 days later, I'm in SEAL training. Graduate SEAL training 5 days later, I'm in Iraq. On my first SEAL deployment, I'd already deployed once with the Army crews. But, and of course, I show up first day, I walk in the Joint Operations Center, and guess what? There's a guy I went to Ranger School with. And he's there with the Delta troop, and we're like, hey, man, we're back. And fell right into it. So great experience. And, I went right into SEAL training. And after that, it was a rocking and rolling few years, nonstop.
So how many rounds does a Navy guy put in his M4 magazine?
28.
How many does an Army guy?
Well, it depends on which unit you're talking about. And they have new mags now, actually. New mags that hold more. So you never wanted to put 30 in because those mags will jam up.
I always laughed about that, yes. So, I was trained by a guy who actually was a green team instructor at one time.
Okay.
Pat Rogers. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Doesn't ring a bell, no.
But anyway, he was always 2 rounds down.
Yep.
Because he was a Marine Corps guy. That's what he came from. And then I've trained with other guys who were big Army. It's always 30. So a little joke.
Well, big Army 30 for sure. I think Rangers but then they started to come out with weather mags later on that could hold more. But because
now they fixed all that.
Yes,
they're just like, no, just put 30 in. But that was a big thing a long time ago.